What's up, YouTube? Chris Lucas here again with part 2 of the mix tutorial for the song You Die I Cry, the Metalcore song. This video is going to have everything part 1 didn't, so everything but bass and drums, and it might be long, but I'll put a table of contents in the description so you can jump around to what you want to hear. Alright, so let's start out right away with guitar, the last really less instrumental element of the mix, I should say. The guitar was recorded with an Ibanez RG series 6-string tuned to C standard. It's like a $300 guitar that I put an EMG 81 in, so it's kind of like mediocre, which is why the DIs are kind of like alright. Then what I did is I just ran them through Amplitube for overdrive pedal, and then into LePo's Lecto amp sim, which I'd love to show you, but I did all the reamping in Logic because, you know, VST Wrapper doesn't work with the LePo's plugin, sadly. And then I'm running it through LeCab with Kaltallens, whichever, 2B SM57 sample, impulse rather. And then, so that's the main rhythm guitar. So let's listen to those for a second. So as you can hear, there's some little noises and stuff. The DIs weren't perfect because again, when we started this, we didn't realize we were gonna share it with the world, but they're fine for our purposes. So from there, it goes through the cab sim into a guitar bus, and the guitar bus has VCC mix bus in the API setting. Shocker. This waves channel. Let me show you. It's a subtle difference, but it just kind of rounds out the low mids. Check it out. Not even low mids, more like just mids. It just kind of helps round them out and made it fit better in the mix for me, filled out the mix a little more. From there, it goes to an EQ. Now, first of all, DMG quality is one of my favorite EQs, as you probably noticed at this point. I've got a lot of tight, bell-shaped EQs to suck some lows out. I'm gonna run the guitars after this into a multi-band compressor for the low mids, but they were still ridiculous. Now, if I turn this EQ off and you look at the analyzer, you'll see what I'm talking about. Right there. Ridiculous. What? Like, where did that come from? But anyway, so that's why I have these tight bands. Now, it seems like I'm taking out a lot of low end. I am, but again, the low end is not in the guitar. The low end's in the bass, so I'd rather have less of it and fill in with bass than have weird, jumpy spikes everywhere. So from this EQ, I have, oh, and also these right here, these EQ bands are to take out some fizziness. Let me solo out the guitar and show you what I'm talking about. When I activate and deactivate these EQ bands, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So especially with this high one, it's got a really awful fizziness that it takes out, and a lot of these cab impulses and amp sims and stuff have that as well as real cabs. So it's good to watch out for that because that can really eat up space and makes your mix sound really messy, like there's a ton going on. You're like, but there isn't. I can't hear anything. A lot of the time, that's one of the reasons, especially in the high end. Or like the high end, like 4 to 6K on guitar. After that, it goes into another EQ, doing more little peak reductions. I also sucked out a bunch of fuzz here. I'll show you. It's that awful like whistling noise. Like if you're listening to your guitar tracks and you hear some weird whistling over everything, that means there's one specific frequency that's poking out a little too much. So listen for that and try to compensate. From there, it goes into multi-band compression. Like I said, nothing special here. Just tighten up the low mids, make sure they don't jump all over the place. The C6, which again is for the snare drum, so that it can sidechain compress the guitars down, and then a limiter. Because again, the guitars, for what I don't know if it was the guitar or the amp sim or the cab or what, but it's probably the DI, I guess, because no matter what I did, it was really low-endy and jumpy, is just limit the peaks off, shave the peaks off, and that's what I'm doing with this. Not a ton of gain reduction. And then I was using channel strip as a gate, but then I decided I didn't need it, so that's not actually doing anything. So there's that guitar track, and then there's also a center guitar track during the choruses, which sounds like this. So that's just for the second half of each chorus to fill it out and make it build more stuff going on. Because if the same instruments just stay stagnant the whole chorus, it's like, okay, well that was loud, and then it was still loud. You kind of got to go somewhere, even if it's just louder. So it's just, again, reamped the same thing as the other one, no cab. I did this cab sim right here, recabbing it, it's great sim. Wasn't too picky, because again, this is supposed to be in the background, so it's supposed to be kind of dull, nothing crazy. I scooped out a ton at 2K and a ton at like 4 to, not a ton, but I scooped out some. Also high pass and low pass pretty aggressively, 150 hertz, sucked out all the low end out of it, because there's not any low end in this part right here is just going to be junk. It's like a little strummy thing. There's no low end. And then this is a really cool plugin. It's this spreader thing that Waves makes. And it basically, well, let me show you what it sounds like. It basically takes the different frequencies. It takes the frequency spectrum of the given track and spreads it out in the stereo field as to give a sense of width without actually creating any more audio. Because otherwise, to make sense of width, you need, like, you can try to double it, you can do chorusing, but all of those, include making a copy of the signal in some way. Then we have clean guitar tracks, and during the little, like, breakdown or like kind of chill part. I don't even know what you call it. The cheesy part. I guess the whole song is the cheesy part. And those sound like this. So those sound like crap, but these sound like crap on purpose. I just use guitar amp. I just mess with it. I mean, it's nothing special. It's whatever. Because at the end of the day, they're all running through this bus where I have them going through the speakerphone thing, which makes them sound like this. Makes them sound like they're coming through a crappy old phone, which is exactly what I wanted them to sound like. So I wasn't really too invested in what the clean tone was like. And then, so that's it for guitars, except for one last thing. There were some parts in the song where I did stutter edits with guitars, and I just wanted to show you how I did that, because somebody's gonna ask me, you did stutter edits, how did you do them? And now I'm telling you. So I just did mute automation, essentially. In Pro Tools, you can mute regions. So I just muted the regions I didn't want to play using the grid. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So in the beginning, after the first chorus, is a stutter edit on the guitar. And I just did, this is beat 1 of the bar that I want to stutter edit. And I basically just did it so on every 8th note, there was one 32nd note on and then 3 32nd notes off. So it sounds like this. Simple as that, nothing special. And at the end of the song, I also do stutter edits, except they're panned as well. So on this, I do, instead of 8th note stutter edits, I do 16th note stutter edits, so it's one 32nd note on, one 32nd note off. And I also pan the tracks so they go beat 1 is all left, beat 2 is all right, and beat 3 is stereo again to give them this kind of like hype, ridiculous thing. And in the mix, kind of get a feel for it, it's ridiculous. Oh, it adds a little, it's totally just a creative thing. There's no reason to do it like sound-wise, just to make a listener go like, oh, that was cute. So that's it for stutter edits, and that's the last thing with guitar. So from guitar, we go on to vocals. Now, vocals on this song are, well, cheesy, but we recorded them early on with like some really mediocre gear, and then we're like, let's just roll with it. Let's just see what happens. So it was all recorded. All the vocals were recorded with a Beta 57, the Shure Beta 57, into a $150 mobile pre in Michael's bedroom. So it's whatever, but it kind of is. I took it as a challenge to try to make these work in the context of like well-recorded fake drums and decently recorded guitars. So there's a few different vocal parts, and I want to go over what I do with each different one and how they fit in the mix, and also what I do creatively with them, to make it more interesting. So the main vocal part, or one of the main vocal parts, is Mike's screaming channel. So here's what that sounds like without anything else on it.
You broke my heart!
So there's a lot of noise floor in it. I mean, it's whatever. So I take that and I first put it through an EQ.
Tore me apart!
Takes out some of the harsh, weird frequencies, and I also do a bit of high roll-off on this, which is odd. You think, like, why would I do that? And the answer is because I have background vocals, like gang vocals going on at the same time, and there's a lot of tracks of them, and they add a lot of air. So I don't need to be like boosting air on this vocal part, because I've got plenty coming from other tracks that are playing at the same time as this. So from EQ, I go to Vox, one of my more preferred vocal compressors, which is not surprising considering it's called Vox. And it's got a little bit of a gate too, so it's a lot of gain reduction.
You broke my heart!
Brings the level up, pretty transparent, pretty smooth, I like it. From there, I go into 1176, fast attack, fast release, all buttons in mode.
You broke my heart!
So this kind of adds that like pumpy, like aggressive attack thing, which goes on, which I like, which I like for these screaming parts in particular. And then I go to another EQ to kind of redo some of the stuff that I undid. I don't want to do too big of EQ moves, so I did a little before the compression, then after compression I do a little bit more again, because again, compression brings a lot of those things I took out back, but not a ton. Then a de-esser, because again, recorded by somebody who's never sung before or screamed on a recording in a bad microphone in a bad room. There's plenty of junk up there you need to get out with the de-esser. And then from the de-esser, I go to a limiter, and it just shaves off a lot and like really levels out the vocal. I'll show you how much gain reduction I'm getting.
You broke my heart!
Not a ton, but it helps just level it out when he gets too close, or just some words pop out a lot more than others. And then from there, I do decapitator. It adds a little bit, not a ton. It's not like it is on drums where it just makes everything sound a million times better. But it does make it a little thicker and a little more, angry sounding, which again, for the purposes of this, is what you're looking for.
You broke my heart! You broke my heart!
So again, dirty parallel compression is essentially what that is. It's good. So all the screaming tracks are basically processed in the same ways. So let's go to the singing tracks. So during the chorus, he has a singing part, which, for the record, is all heavily auto-tuned. When you listen to the raw tracks that I gave you, they're all heavily auto-tuned. I did not want anyone to have to deal with that. It was bad. And we know it was bad, but that was the fun of it. So if people really want them to try to auto-tune them, I'll put them up, but you don't want to deal with it. So here's what these sound like with everything on them.
Struggle for air and reach for the light.
So they're really forward, kind of crispy almost at the top end. That's bad mic technique and the gear, and also because I liked it like that. I like them kind of crispy and like up there. So they go VCC channel, again normal, 2A, which is much smoother, or not much smoother, it's just very smooth. The 1176, again, same type of settings, not all buttons in mode, because I want it to be smoother. I didn't want it to be like that really aggressive, like pushy sound that all buttons in mode gives you. And then I've got EQ, again, a lot of these EQs on the different vocals look similar because they're all the same mic and pre, so ultimately and person, so ultimately they're going to look similar. Vocal rider for the singy parts because they were so dynamic. Happens. And then a limiter again to do the same thing I did with the other tracks, just shave off the peaks and level it out even more. So here's what these sound like in the mix. This is without reverb or delays and anything, by the way.
Struggle for air and reach for the light.
I also have backgrounds that are treated in a similar way, a little simpler signal chain and a lot more low-end roll-off, but essentially the same. So those sound like this.
I can't win this fight.
And with the main vocal, they sound like this.
I can't win this fight.
So from there, we go to, there's only one other vocal part, and it's the death metal vocals that our friend Colin did. And he has two separate parts, but they're both treated similarly. This part is under the pre-chorus to double what he's saying, and here's what it sounds like with everything on it.
Bitch, why did you steal the key to my heart?
Now, you can hear a lot of artifacts and stuff in that, and that's because I vocalized that to the main part during the pre-chorus. Now, they're pretty audible, but because it lines up so well with the normal track, which is untouched in terms of time alignment, you can't really tell, and it sounds better when they're super spot on with artifacts than to me if they're not super spot on without artifacts. So here's what they sound like together, and you'll see what I mean.
Bitch, why did you steal the key to my heart?
When the syllables, like when the ends of words cut off perfectly together like that, it sounds way better, and the impact of the vocal is way improved. So even there, with just those two playing, you could barely tell there's artifacts. With all of it playing, you're not going to be able to tell. Check it out.
Bitch, why did you steal the key?
You get the idea. Then there's there's other parts where he does stereo doubled death metal screamy things, and those are treated similarly. Really simple signal chain, just RVox, 2A, EQ, and that's it. And these sound like this.
Oh boy, I struggle for air.
Nothing special, just some death metal vocals. So we have all the vocal tracks. Oh, one last thing. They're these gang vocals. And the gang vocals are just us with the mic shouting 8 times, essentially. In retrospect, I would have liked to do it with like a stereo pair. We all go to one corner of the room and yell it, and then go to a different corner and do it. But we did it one person, one mic, and I tried to make it work. So each of those sounds essentially like this.
Broke my heart.
So nothing special, pretty weak. I just compress them hard, gate them, and then they all go into this bus that has a 2A on it. EQ, suck out a lot of the low end, De-esser, because again, they're all vocal line together, so when there's S's and T's, they really come out, so it's pretty heavily de-essed. Besides, I don't want the enunciation of the gang vocals to come through. I want the enunciation of the main enunciation, right? Like there is any, but you know what I mean. I want that to come through. And the gang bus then just goes to an L1 to maximize it out and like really level it out. I don't want, because there's so many different takes, they're so different, it gets crazy, and I don't want no craziness with that. And those all go to a Verb, which I'll explain a bit. So now that we have all the vocal tracks in their process, we want to send them to like effects, like verbs and whatnot. So here's the setup for what I did on this recording. I got a few different things. I have a ping pong delay, which is basically a delay that just bounces left-right on half notes. It's also high and low pass pretty steeply, 2K and 250. I mean, that's a lot of stuff rolled off. But again, I just want it there to give the vocal space. So listen to the main screaming part with ping pong delay and without it. Here's with it.
You broke my heart.
Of depth and a little bit of stereo width in when everything's playing. We also have a mono verb I use for space, and it's basically just a plate that I have all the reverb, all the late reflections turned off, and I have the early reflections turned on. And that just, again, the same thing with snare. It just adds a bit of depth to the vocal. And let me show you what that sounds like.
You broke my heart!
And that's on. This is off.
You broke my heart!
Really subtle. I don't use a lot of it because there's already so much stuff going on. I also have a mono verb I use as a tail, and it's just a chamber. I have the early reflections. They're actually on the default setting, but I'm not using this for them. And it basically just adds some tail to the end of each word. It kind of makes each word like fall off in the distance as opposed to just abruptly stop like it does in reality. And this is what that sounds like with it.
You broke my heart!
This is probably the most pronounced reverb I'm using on the vocals, so here's it without it.
You broke my heart!
So you can see what it does. I skipped this, I'm leaving it to last, and I'll tell you why. The exaggerated delay is something I've been using a lot of as kind of just like a little creative element, because I hear it a lot, especially in like metalcore type stuff, which this is. And it's basically where during certain words, certain phrases, I delay things exaggeratedly, essentially, if that's even a word. And it's basically a 1 bar length delay, and it's just louder and stereo, and is supposed to add that like that zazz, whatever. So here, I'll show you an example of me busing that to that. Whoops.
Hide your face!
So in the mix, it sounds a lot cooler because it's like there are these like big words that come at you, and those are super exaggerated with this delay. It's a cool effect. Let's check it out. So they're not super pronounced, but I like them. As a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna turn them up because I like them. I like them more pronounced than that. Here, let's check it out. And because they're so loud, I don't want them to feedback like the ping pong delay is doing like crazy for such a long time. So I just use 2-tap delay with no feedback, essentially. So just 2 taps and that's it. It ends. And it sounds natural and it keeps the mix clean. So that's all. That's it for vocals. That's all I do. Nothing too crazy. That's it. So from vocals, we go to synths, which is the last element of the mix. And the synths, I had never done a synth part for a metalcore song like this, so I used Massive and Absinthe and just kind of did some really cheesy stuff. So here's the Massive part. Okay, that's just really legato. It accents the beats a little bit, but not too much. And then there's a part that really accents the rhythm of it. It's the Absinthe part, and that's this. So that, as you can tell, is really emphasizes the 16th notes. So those combined sound like this. So cool. There's also a lead part that sounds like this in the second half of the end breakdown. I'm not going to play that more than that because that's really obnoxious. And that's just, again, another massive lead. It's supposed to sound ridiculous, and I think it does. So all of them together at the end sound like this. Kind of loud, and it's what I was going for. There's also a few 808s. I just got this sample off the internet. I think I included all of them in the raw files I uploaded. If not, I'll find where I downloaded this from. And I just did a few of them. I did a reverse version of it in front of it to kind of give it this like swell up, really cool effect. I just thought of doing it, and or maybe Michael did. I don't know. So one of us thought of doing it, and I was like, I haven't heard that before. So we did it, and it sounds cool. So check it out solo. So by itself, it's like, okay, whatever. But because on that downbeat, everything kicks in, if you're in a car with a sub or something, it feels really cool. Check it out.
Bye.
It really pushes. There's one last element I did, and it's on the snare. I basically added this exaggerated snare slash reverse snare reverb on every other snare drum hit. So check out what this sounds like with the drums. So it sounds ridiculous, and that was definitely the idea there. And what I did is I just bust the snare drum, probably just the top snare. As a matter of fact, this reverb might still be from Slate Snare, because originally I was using Slate Snare, then I changed it. No, excuse me, I was using the Black Beauty. And I just busted to a hall, a ridiculously long hall, printed it, reversed it, put it in front of it, and then shortened the beginning with time compression expansion so that it was like a huge hall but really fast. And that's what makes that really like quick swell up into the big long tail reverb. Nothing special. It's pretty straightforward. So really quick, I want to go over mastering before we finish here. I didn't use a lot on the mastering of this track, but I did a lot of trial and error to decide that this is what I wanted. I guess I'll put it that way. So there's not a lot to it. Just VCC mix bus. Again, like the least surprising thing ever. The glue. What I like about this, especially that I like more than the Waves SSL one, is that it is this high pass, so that the lows freely go through and can get dealt with by a multiband compression after, and they're separate from the high end, like the transients of the snare and all that, and the low end can just be by itself, and you can make that punchy on its own. But again, just very, very normal settings. I'm getting about 5 dB of gain reduction during the whole song. Auto release, 30 millisecond attack, ratio of 2. Just very, very standard. Ozone 5 EQ, I'm not actually using that. I was messing with it, and then I realized that I can just do the little bit of gain I want through this multi-band compression. This is actually first. Basically just doing a little bit of compression on each band. Maybe a dB or two. I'm not even sure what this. I don't know. I just do a little bit. I don't know how you read this meter. If it's logarithmic, like that's 1. I really don't know. So it's just like a ratio of 2 on each band. Medium knee, pretty slow attack, pretty quick release. Just to shave off little bits to make it a little bit punchier, so that when it hits a limiter, it's already dynamics are squashed just that little extra bit. Because, you know, especially with metal, you end up limiting stuff really hard in the end, and to make it survive that and not sound awful, it's kind of a trend you've seen me do the whole mix, is like put limiters on stuff to like take away air and peaks, because those air and peaks, when they're hitting a limiter really hard, can sound really bad. And then it goes into just Steven Slate. For most of the mix, the ITP slider is at 0. But during parts where there's only guitar, and I know a lot of people do this, I automate it to go all the way to smooth. Because when just guitar is playing, because guitar has no like dynamics, essentially it's just like just loud all the time, it clips the limiter pretty hard. Although the limiter when the drums are playing and guitar and everything's playing, it sounds great. But with just guitar, it sounds really bad. So during parts where there's only guitar or no transient heavy material, a lot of times you need to automate this down. That's the only downfall with this plugin. But the fact that you're able to do that, to compensate for it, to me means that it's kind of the best, because there's just a lot you can do with it. So that's the whole mastering chain. That's it. That's the whole mix. You now know as much as I do about this mix. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, teddy bears, you can post them, and I'll try to get back to you. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you like the song, and look forward to our next song. It should be a Tech Death song we're doing next, and it's going to be recorded better, for one, now that I know I'm doing this, and it's going to be like even more ridiculous than this one, so should be fun. Anyway, I'll see you around, YouTube.